One project, one failure, $5 billion out the window. It's October 1st, so I thought we could kick off a collective series of digital transformation or enterprise tech horror stories. And the reason that we talk about failures is not to bag on the company, right? It's to make sure that we garner those lessons so we don't fail on this absolutely huge macro scale, like losing $5 billion, like the story I'll tell today. So if you have a story you want me to tell, definitely DM it or put in the comments something that you've experienced so we can, again, shed some light on these failure areas that many times big software actually pay companies to not talk about because they don't want people to know that their system has the capability of failing if you don't implement it correctly. So today I'm going to cover the US Air Force Expeditionary Combat System. And this project is widely recognized as the most costly and high-profilely embarrassing ERP failure in history. So in 2005, the US Air Force was like, hey, we have like 200 legacy systems. We want to figure out how to pull them all together and streamline. Great goal. So they chose an Oracle ERP platform that was going to help manage over 33 billion in assets across 600 locations across the world. They had Computer Science Corporation as their system integrator, with Oracle providing the off-the-shelf software. Those were the goals and those were the partners. So what went wrong? The U.S. subcommittee actually did an investigation around this because this is obviously a public-funded, taxpayer-funded initiative. So they needed to report back like, hey, how did you guys lose $5 billion in taxpayer money? The biggest thing they found was just organizational resistance and poor change management. These teams were not ready to change their business processes. They didn't even know their business processes. And it all started at the beginning with this relationship with Oracle. They didn't vet their requirements. They didn't look at other systems that could potentially be a good fit for them. They were really cozy with Oracle in the beginning, and their requirements were just not met with the system, which led, as we see all the time in our industry, to over customization, trying to bend and break the system to fit the requirements as opposed to looking at a system that might be a better fit for you. Because this was a dumpster fire of a decade, it took 10 years for them to finally pull the plug on this project. In 2012, everybody hated each other at that point. So there was a lot of contentious relationships involved, and nobody was in there kind of healing and being able to oversee how are we going to move forward. Just a lot of finger pointing of this is your fault, this is your fault. And I would say the number one thing I see in my analysis that a lot of other analysts don't talk about is their lack of project management skills. And this happens all the time in the public sector. They're just not used to managing a project at this scale. They don't have a lot of technical project managers. They also don't outsource a lot of the time. They have who they work with through their government contracts. That's not someone that often knows how to implement just a project of this size. So there was a lot of really big risks that weren't evaluated, weak project governance, and just an overall persistence of timeline and scope creep. And we all know scope creep leads to actually blowing up the budget, which they obviously did here on a very grand scale. So what happened? They obviously lost anywhere depending on how you report it because Oracle's never going to tell you, and a lot of people are probably under NDAs for this, but it's between $1 billion and $5 billion in losses over that 10-year span. After all of that, the U.S. Air Force reverted back to its legacy system. It wasn't even able to implement something. The ECCSS example is often referred to in the Senate as a textbook example of IT mismanagement and lack of accountability. So what can we learn from this absolutely terrifying ERP nightmare? We can learn a variety of different things, but mostly any implementation needs to start with unbiased requirements, right? You cannot already be in a relationship with the software vendor that's going to tell you, I have whatever you need. I can give you whatever you need. Maybe your incumbent vendor is the right choice, but it's your job as the leadership team to do your due diligence and make your requirements by yourself or with a third party that's not going to sell you any software. So they're not manipulating you into saying, you know what, we can customize A, B, and C to fit that. Over customization is very dangerous because then you lack ownership. You can never fire your SI at that point because they own your custom integration. We see that all the time, and we deal with clients that literally have choice A to break their entire system and get ownership of their own customization, or be in a locked-in lifelong relationship. Where does that happen in business? It doesn't. Number two is risk assessment. There was no risk assessment done, or very little, in this project. If you don't look at, especially an organization this size, if you don't have a year-long risk assessment that really understands all of the different scenarios in which this could fail, you're going to fail. 100% of the time, I'll bet my salary on it. And the last thing I'll touch on is governance. So we need strong project governance, and we need that buy-in from the leadership team. It's not a destination, it's a journey, right? We can't just say, yes, they approved the budget and then never talk to the executive sponsor again. We need that sponsor to be going along and updating the executive team, the board, the Senate committee, or whatever we're reporting into, the status of the project. We also need to have the ability to have accountability and transparency in the project. So if you're a developer and you see something wrong, you need to be able to say that. And that's where a lot of these failures lead, is just being too scared to bring it up because your organizational culture is, if there's something wrong, fix it. Don't bring it to me. And that is really the nail in the coffin for this implementation. I hope you liked this scary story. I think it's kind of fun to do through the month of October. Let me know what you think. Let me know what lessons you learned. I'm curious to hear. I know you guys have tons of experience out there, so I'm curious to hear your stories as well.